Our chapter is Chapter 7, The Emergence of Swing by Jada Gibson, Kayla Dodds, and Jayana Dixon.
What is swing? The term swing was first seen being used as a notion describing what the classic jazz composition sounded like, or more specifically, how effortlessly the sound blended together. With so many sounds and styles at once, Louis Armstrong described the difference between the groups that swing and those who didn't in his autobiography, Swing That Music. He talks about how the phrase going to town means to let loose and take the music with you. He goes on to say that any trained player can follow a score, but it takes a real swing player to leave it and know how. Okay, the it factor. Every one player in a swing orchestra must have that certain something it takes. You know when to leave it and get back into it. Every player must have it to make a swing orchestra worth listening to, or else it could very well make it sound like very loud and jumbled mess. Every time a player jumps in, it gives the music something interesting and worth listening to. If every person was allowed to play just how they wanted to in a band of almost 10 plus people, there would be all kind of musical clashing going on. That is why most ordinary bands and their conductors wouldn't dare leave the music as it was originally supposed to be played. Those players play as one, picking up and following each other. You may hear a melody played once and may never hear it played the same way again. Swing music is unique and about flow. This new swing style was different from previous rendered classical jazz. The new music style and way of performing with soloists and each other allowed for better textural and timbral variation than was previously possible with smaller classical jazz ensembles. The third use of the swing term came from the area and time which it was being commercialized, and it reached full bloom by the mid-1930s. The aesthetic begins with the New Orleans phase of classic jazz. Swing was worked out in the 1920s, which was called the pre-swing era. It is important to note that swing is not exclusive to jazz and was present in other African American styles of music. Okay. James Weldon Johnson spoke about the presence of swing in spirituals. He said that he said that the European concept of music was melody and that the African American concept was rhythm. He goes on to say that this is why white people have a difficult time getting into the swing of our music. He says that they focus too much on playing the notes correctly instead of also playing what is not there or not heard. He says that in the conversation, the swing of spirituals was sudden and elusive because there is further intricacy into the rhythm. He says that it is part of the culture's love to play with the fundamentals of the beat, and it is something amazing to watch.
Swing style and the big band. Big bands have always been associated with swing style and jazz, although the big band was created before jazz. When ragtime became popular, these big bands became syncopated bands. Dances such as cakewalks, two-steps, and other ragtime compositions became associated with these bands. In the pictures below, in the middle, you can see this is an example of a big band. The picture on the left, this is an example of cakewalk. And the picture on the right, this is another example of the swing style. Big bands going global. Syncopated bands started becoming very popular and moved its way around the US and throughout Europe. The picture on the left, you can see James Reese Europe. He was one of the first to take a big band global. He took the 71-piece infantry band on a tour throughout French cities, and the man on the right is William Marion Cook. He also took the Southern Syncopated Orchestra on a tour throughout Europe, and it lasted until 1922. Riverboat culture. These big bands were also popular on riverboats. Louis Armstrong was recruited by the band leader Fate Marbell to perform on the Dixie Belle in 1918. In this picture, this is an example. This is an example of the band leader Fate Marbell, and I don't know if you can see it, but Louis Armstrong is pictured in this picture also. Dance bands. Dance bands became very popular in Chicago, although they were also composed of usually of white people, and one of the most famous leaders of a dance band was Paul Whiteman, which you can see him on the left. These dance bands usually performed syncopated music with performances that were generally rigid, rhythmic, and harmonic. The swing effect. When dealing with ensembles, a couple of components that you have to think about is handling a large group of musicians and making the music fluid and spontaneous while also improvising, making sure that the music is fluid and everybody is syncopated. Elements of swing. One section of an ensemble is the reed section, which includes clarinets and saxophones. Each ensemble is usually consisted of three reed musicians. There are more clarinet players and saxophonists to balance out the sound. In this picture, these are examples of reed instruments. The brass section, which includes the trombone and the trumpets. There was usually one trombonist in each ensemble, and this number rose to three in the 1930s. There were no more than three trumpeters, and the tuba was used as a bass. In this picture, you can see an example of brass instruments. The rhythmic section, which included guitar, piano, drums, etc., things like that. The guitar became commonly used in the 1920s, and the piano was a key part of the rhythmic section. In the brass and reed section, there were three components of that, which is homorhythmic, which is a single melody line, antiphonic, which is call and response, and polyphonic, which is two or more melody lines. In this video that I'm about to show, this is an example of call and response, which is antiphonic.
One of the ways that we communicate in jazz is through what we call call and response. I may play something and someone else will play it back, or simply answer what I asked. Maybe something like this. Alvin?
Rhythm of swing. Unlike other bands and ensembles, the swing band offered possibilities of a foreground, a middle ground, and a background. In the foreground, most of the time, it was used for the melody. In the middle ground, used for counter melodies and or harmonies. The background gave rhythmic support / harmonic support. This made a lot of the melodies extremely diverse. Some of the melodies were constructed from scales other than the major or minor scale. It wasn't uncommon to show how melodies were influenced by more than one scale during this era. Here are some examples. In Duke Ellington, the opening of It Don't Mean a Thing, If It Ain't Got That Swing, it has a blues scale. Jumping at the Woods site is an incomplete G pentatonic scale. Tuxedo Junction is an influence of a blues scale. The harmonic language was broad. It ranged from simple use of simple diatonic structures, upper extensions, to the use of secondary dominants and more exotic harmonies.
These are a list of our responsibilities, and these are the references.